In the shimmering haze of a New York autumn afternoon, where the sun dipped low over the skyline like a lover's lingering gaze, Charlotte Lewis stepped into the world of opulence that was William Harris's domain. Her heart, a delicate vessel of dreams deferred and resilience forged in the fires of Brooklyn's unyielding streets, beat with a quiet determination. She was no stranger to the grind of survival. Her unfinished psychology degree from the State University hung like a shadow over her ambitions, a reminder of the sacrifices she'd made for family, for the relentless pull of necessity. But today, as she crossed the threshold of the Upper East Side penthouse, her ebony skin glowing under the soft chandelier light, she carried the weight of possibility in her stride. Little Ethan Harris, with his wide, innocent eyes, the color of storm-tossed seas, sat cross-legged on the plush Persian rug, his small fingers fumbling with the jagged edges of a dinosaur puzzle. Charlotte knelt beside him, her voice a melody of warmth and encouragement, guiding his hands with the tenderness of one who had once dreamed of mending minds and hearts. "See, Ethan, this piece fits right here, the T-Rex's mighty tail. You're building something fierce and fabulous just like you." The boy's laughter bubbled up a pure sound that cut through the sterile elegance of the room, where marble floors gleamed like forgotten promises, and floor-to-ceiling windows framed the chaotic beauty of Manhattan below. Yet a shadow fell across the doorway in that fragile moment of connection. William Harris stood there, his presence an unyielding force, like the steel girders that held his empire aloft. Tall and commanding, with chiseled features etched by years of boardroom battles and solitary triumphs, his white skin bore the faint lines of a man who had conquered fortunes but lost touch with the softer rhythms of life. His suit, tailored to perfection in midnight blue, hugged his athletic frame, and his eyes, sharp, piercing gray, swept over the scene with the detachment of a king surveying his realm. He was the billionaire CEO of Harris Enterprises, a tech behemoth that wove digital threads across the globe, turning data into gold. Widowed young, he had built walls around his heart, channeling grief into ambition, leaving little room for the whims of emotion. He said, "I need to speak with you alone." His voice a low rumble, cold as the autumn wind, whispering against the glass. Charlotte's pulse quickened, a flutter of unease mingling with curiosity. She rose gracefully, her simple blouse and jeans a stark contrast to the room's grandeur, yet she held herself with the poise of someone who had faced far greater tempests. "Is everything all right with Ethan?" she asked, her tone laced with genuine concern, her dark eyes meeting his without flinching. "No, it's about tonight," William replied, his posture rigid, arms crossed like barriers against vulnerability. "You'll accompany me to the company gala at the Plaza Hotel." The words hung in the air heavy with presumption, and Charlotte blinked, her mind racing through the implications. Confusion bloomed into defiance, a spark igniting in her chest. "Excuse me, I was hired as a nanny. Mr. Harris, not as whatever this is." Her rich and resonant voice carried the cadence of her Brooklyn roots, a blend of strength and melody that refused to be diminished. William's expression remained impassive, though a flicker of impatience danced in his eyes. "The individual I planned to bring canceled at the last moment. You're available, and you'll do. Wear something appropriate. I've arranged for a stylist." She stood taller, her slim frame radiating an inner fire that belied her gentle demeanor with Ethan. "Appropriate. And what exactly does that mean in your world? Because in mine, a contract doesn't include playing dress-up for your social obligations." The air between them crackled, charged with the unspoken divide of their worlds, his of inherited privilege and calculated power, hers of hard-won independence and quiet dreams. He stepped closer, his scent a subtle mix of sandalwood and authority wafting toward her. I compensate generously, Miss Lewis. A sitter for Ethan is already en route, and the stylist will ensure you're enhanced. His gaze lingered perhaps a second too long on her natural curls, her unadorned beauty, as if assessing a canvas yet to be painted. Charlotte crossed her arms, mirroring his stance, her complete lips curving into a wry smile that masked the storm brewing within. Enhanced. My hair, my style, they're fine as they are. And you can't just summon me like some delivery service. This isn't pizza. It's my dignity. A deep breath escaped him, his composure a fortress. Yet she saw the subtle clench of his jaw, the way his eyes softened ever so slightly at her unyielding spirit. Be ready by 8. Please don't keep me waiting. With that, he turned his footsteps echoing down the hallway, like the closing of a chapter she hadn't agreed to write. Left alone, Charlotte's heart thundered a symphony of anger and intrigue. She returned to Ethan, who looked up curiously, clutching a puzzle piece shaped like a soaring pterodactyl. Are you going out with Daddy tonight? He asked, his voice small and hopeful. She knelt again, forcing a smile that bloomed like a rose in adversity. It seems so, little one. But our dinosaurs will wait for us, they're patient creatures. Inside, however, turmoil swirled. William Harris thought he could command the stars and bend the world to his will with billions and brooding charm. But Charlotte was no wilting flower. She was the root that cracked concrete, the voice that echoed in silence. If she stepped into his glittering realm, it would be with her head high, her essence unaltered, ready to challenge the foundations of his isolated heart. As the hours passed, the penthouse became a quiet activity hive. Ethan napped under her watchful eye, his dreams perhaps filled with the prehistoric worlds they built together. Charlotte paced the living room, her mind a whirlwind of reflections. She thought of her mother, whose illness had stolen her scholarship dreams, forcing her into a mosaic of jobs: cashier in bustling delis, waitress in dimly lit diners, caregiver to the elderly, whose stories mirrored her own family's struggles. Each role had sculpted her, teaching her the art of empathy, the power of observation. Psychology wasn't just a degree. It was her lens on the world, helping her see the cracks in facades like William's. The doorbell chimed at precisely 7, and Grace the stylist burst in like a whirlwind of positivity, her arms laden with garment bags that whispered of silk and sequins. Darling Charlotte, let's uncover the queen within you, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with the joy of creation. Charlotte hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of a nearby vase, its crystal facets catching the light like captured stars. I'm not sure about this. I don't want to be someone I'm not. Grace's laugh was a gentle cascade. Oh, honey, we're not changing you, we're amplifying. Your beauty is raw, authentic, like a diamond in the rough. Trust me, you'll see the power you've always held. Charlotte surrendered to the process, allowing Grace to weave her magic. The mirror became a portal reflecting not just her form, but the layers of her soul. As the clock ticked toward 8, she felt a transformation, not of appearance, but of resolve. This night was no mere obligation. It was her stage, her chance to pierce the veil of William's indifference. Downstairs in his study, William adjusted his cufflinks, his mind adrift in the sea of corporate strategies and impending deals. Yet thoughts of Charlotte intruded her defiant gaze, and her voice wrapped around words like velvet over steel. He had built Harris Enterprises from his father's failed ventures, turning a Philadelphia legacy of modest means into a New York titan. But success came at a cost: isolation, the loss of his wife in a tragic accident that left Ethan motherless and him armored against feeling. Charlotte's arrival was meant to be practical, a solution to his nanny woes. Yet here he was, extending an invitation that felt perilously close to crossing lines he dared not acknowledge. The clock struck 8, and as Charlotte prepared to descend, the air hummed with anticipation. Their worlds collided not with a crash, but with gravity's slow, inevitable pull. This force would draw them into a dance of hearts, where defiance sparked desire, and the unexpected became the undeniable. As twilight draped Manhattan in a cloak of indigo and gold, the penthouse pulsed with the quiet alchemy of change. Charlotte stood before the full-length mirror in the guest suite, her breath catching at the reflection that gazed back a vision woven from Grace's skilled hands and her own unyielding spirit. The emerald green dress clung to her curves like a lover's whisper, its fabric flowing like a river of midnight dreams, accentuating the graceful arch of her waist and the elegant slope of her shoulders. Soft curls cascaded around her face, framed by the warm glow of her skin, while subtle makeup highlighted the depth of her eyes, pools of chocolate that held stories of triumph and trial. For the first time in years, she saw the woman beneath the roles, not just the nanny, the survivor, but a force of beauty and intellect ready to claim her place in the shadows of William's world. Grace stepped back, her eyes misting with pride. "You are a masterpiece, Charlotte. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. The fire in your soul shines through every seam." Charlotte's fingers traced the neckline, a delicate V that hinted at vulnerability without surrender. "It's more than I expected. But remember, this is for one night. I'm not here to blend in. I'm here to stand out on my terms." Down in the foyer, William waited, his fingers absently adjusting his tie, a silk accessory that matched the storm in his eyes. The Plaza Hotel gala loomed like a battlefield of alliances and ambitions, where deals were sealed with champagne toasts and glances held the weight of fortunes. He had attended countless such events, arm in arm with women who faded into the background of his memory. But tonight, with Charlotte, an unfamiliar thrill stirred within him, a mix of apprehension and intrigue, as if inviting her had unlocked a door he hadn't known existed. The soft click of heels on marble announced her arrival. William turned, and time seemed to suspend, the air thickening with unspoken electricity. She stood at the top of the staircase, a silhouette of grace descending like a queen from her throne. The emerald dress caught the light, shimmering as if alive, and her presence filled the space with an aura that commanded reverence. His breath hitched his usual composure, fracturing under the weight of her transformation. She was not merely acceptable. She was breathtaking, a blend of elegance and earthiness that pierced his guarded heart. "You look remarkable," he managed, his voice a husky murmur, laced with admiration he couldn't fully conceal. Charlotte tilted her head, a playful spark in her eyes, as she reached the bottom step. Remarkable, high praise from the man who thought I needed enhancement. Not too shabby for someone more at home with puzzles than parties. He extended his arm, a formal and intimate gesture, and she took it with a touch that sent a subtle current through them both. "As long as you navigate the evening with poise and avoid any wine-related mishaps, your motivations are your own." Her laugh was a warm, genuine cascade cutting through his stoic facade. "Oh, William, always the pragmatist. But tonight, I'm here for me to remind myself, and perhaps you, that beauty isn't borrowed. It's innate." The front door opened to the waiting limousine, its black exterior gleaming under the streetlights like a chariot to destiny. As they slid into the leather seats, the city unfolded around them, towers of glass reaching for the stars, streets alive with the pulse of millions of dreams. Charlotte gazed out the window, her mind a tapestry of emotions. The thrill of the unknown, the sting of his initial command, and beneath it all, a curious pull toward the man beside her. For his part, William stole glances, captivated by how the passing lights danced across her features, illuminating the quiet strength that had already begun to unravel the threads of his isolation. The drive to the plaza was a symphony of silence and subtle exchanges, where words unspoken hung like stars in the night sky. "Tell me," she ventured, her voice a gentle probe. "Why me?" Surely a billionaire like you has a roster of willing companions." He leaned back, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that quickened her pulse. "Efficiency. You're here capable and intriguing. In a world of facades, you seem refreshingly honest." "Real," she echoed, a smile playing on her lips. "That's a compliment. But remember, William, reality has a way of disrupting plans." As the limousine pulled up to the plaza's grand entrance, with valets swarming like attendants to royalty, the night beckoned with promise and peril. Charlotte stepped out the cool air, kissing her skin, and linked her arm with his once more. Together they ascended the steps, two souls from disparate realms, bound by circumstance, yet drawn by an invisible thread of fate. In that moment, as the doors swung open to reveal the ballroom's splendor, the transformation was complete, not just of her outward form, but of the delicate dance beginning between their hearts, where elegance met enigma, and the hidden depths of desire awaited revelation. Inside the ballroom was a dreamscape of gold and crystal chandeliers, cascading light like falling stars, and the murmur of elite conversations weaving a web of influence. William guided her through the throng, his hand at the small of her back, a protective anchor that radiated warmth. Heads turned, whispers followed the striking black woman in emerald beside the enigmatic billionaire, a pairing that stirred curiosity and envy in equal measure. Yet, as they mingled, Charlotte's poise shone like a beacon. An investor approached, his eyes appraising. "William, who's this captivating companion, Charlotte Lewis?" She interjected smoothly, extending her hand with a confidence that belied her nerves. "Pleased to meet you." The conversation flowed, Charlotte drawing on her psychology insights to navigate the social currents, her laughter a melody that drew smiles, even from the sternest faces. William watched, a quiet awe blooming within him, as she transformed the evening from obligation to enchantment. In her, he glimpsed not just beauty, but a partner in the truest sense, a woman whose elegance unveiled layers he yearned to explore, whose presence promised to heal the fractures in his soul. As the night deepened, their glances lingered longer, touches brushed with intention, and the hidden elegance of their connection began to unfurl like petals under the moon's gentle caress. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom glowed like a constellation captured in crystal, its chandeliers casting prisms of light across a sea of black ties and shimmering gowns. The air thrummed with the clink of champagne flutes and the murmured cadence of power, where every smile was a currency and every glance a contract. Charlotte Lewis stepped into this gilded arena on William Harris's arm, her emerald dress a vibrant pulse against the muted elegance of Manhattan's elite. Her heart, a delicate balance of pride and trepidation, beat with the rhythm of a woman who had navigated Brooklyn's gritty streets, but now faced a different battlefield, one of whispers and wealth, where her presence was a provocation. William, the stoic billionaire, whose gray eyes held storms of ambition, guided her with a hand at her elbow. His touch, a quiet anchor in the tempest of scrutiny. As they crossed the threshold, the room seemed to pause. A collective breath held at the sight of them. The white titan of Harris Enterprises, sculpted in a tailored navy suit, beside the striking black woman, whose elegance was as undeniable as unexpected. Charlotte's posture was regal, her shoulders squared like a warrior's, yet her smile carried the warmth of summer, disarming those who dared to underestimate her. The crowd parted their eyes, tracing the lines of her dress, the soft waves of her hair, the quiet confidence that radiated like starlight. She was no mere accessory, she was a force, and William felt the weight of her presence shift the gravity of his world. They moved through the throng, weaving past executives and investors whose names adorned skyscrapers and stock tickers. William's voice was low, a velvet murmur meant for her alone. "Stay close, Charlotte. This crowd loves to test newcomers." Her lips curved, a spark of mischief in her dark eyes. "Don't worry, Mr. Harris. I've faced tougher crowds than these. Try serving coffee to a Brooklyn diner at rush hour." Laced with humor, her words carried a defiance that made his heart skip a rare crack in his armored composure. Their first encounter came swiftly, a shadow cast by Victoria Sinclair Williams' ex-fiancée, whose Boston lineage was as old as the cobblestones of Beacon Hill. She glided toward them, her navy gown a study in understated opulence, her blonde hair swept into a chignon that spoke of effortless control. Her smile was a sharp and precise blade as she tilted her head, appraising Charlotte with the cool detachment of a collector examining a rare suspect artifact. "William, darling," she purred, her voice dripping with honeyed venom. "Who is this?" Vibrant addition to the evening. Charlotte met her gaze, unflinching, her smile a shield of poised charm. "Charlotte Lewis," she said, extending a hand with the grace of a diplomat. "And you must be Victoria. That dress is exquisite, such courage to wear something timeless in a room full of trends." Victoria's eyes narrowed, caught off guard by the veiled compliment that danced on the edge of a challenge. She shook Charlotte's hand with a delicate grip, as if touching something fragile, and replied, "Charmed. Green is bold, quite noticeable for someone new to these circles." "Oh, I've never been one for fading into the background." Charlotte countered, her tone smooth as silk, her eyes alight with a fire that dared Victoria to press further. "Invisibility doesn't suit me." The air crackled with their exchange, a duel of wit cloaked in civility. William stood silent, his jaw tightening as he sensed the undercurrent of rivalry. Victoria's laugh was a brittle chime, her gaze flicking to the investors circling them. "And do you work with Harris Enterprises? Or is this a charitable appearance?" Before William could intervene, Charlotte stepped forward, her voice steady, rich with the cadence of her roots. "I'm actually involved in community initiatives. I was discussing with Mr. DuPont here." She nodded to a French investor nearby, how Harris's urban renewal projects could learn from grassroots models in Harlem. Accessibility isn't just infrastructure, it's dignity. DuPont, a silver-haired man with a penchant for innovation, nodded enthusiastically. "Miss Lewis, your perspective is refreshing. In Paris, we've seen community-led solar projects empower locals. Are you familiar with the Lumiere initiative?" Charlotte's eyes sparkled, her mind quick as a whip. "Absolutely. Last quarter's report showed a 15% increase in community engagement, promising data for scaling here." Her knowledge, drawn from late-night readings of William's reports out of sheer curiosity, stunned the group. William's gaze lingered on her, a mix of surprise and admiration blooming in his chest. She wasn't just holding her own. She was commanding the room. Victoria's smile tightened, her composure fraying like delicate lace under strain. How eclectic. Harris Enterprises must be embracing a pretty inclusive hiring policy these days. Her words dripped with condescension, a jab meant to diminish. Charlotte tilted her head, her smile unwavering. "Inclusion is just good business, Ms. Sinclair. After all, it takes real vision to see value, whereas others only see labels." The retort landed like a velvet-gloved punch, and Victoria's forced laugh couldn't mask the flicker of unease in her eyes. William cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the tension. "Victoria, if you're implying something, say it plainly." His tone was firm, but Charlotte needed no defender. She stood tall, her presence a beacon that drew every eye, her wit a weapon that carved her place in this world of privilege. As they approached the main table, the whispers followed a symphony of curiosity and envy. Charlotte greeted each guest with effortless grace, her laughter a melody that softened even the sternest faces. She spoke of community gardens in Brooklyn, children who dreamed beyond cracked sidewalks, weaving stories that made numbers human. William watched, his heart stirring with a warmth he hadn't felt since his wife's laughter filled their home years ago. Charlotte was no mere stand-in. She was a revelation, her every word and gesture chipping away at the walls he'd built around his soul. Dinner unfolded in courses, each dish a work of art. But Charlotte held the room captive. She leaned toward an investor from Silicon Valley, her voice low and engaging. "Your job in sustainable tech is inspiring, but have you considered microgrants for minority-led startups? It's where innovation meets impact." The man nodded, captivated, scribbling a note as if her words were gold. William's fork paused mid-air, his gaze fixed on her. How had he overlooked this? This woman hired to care for his son was weaving connections that could reshape his company's future. Her intelligence, her authenticity. It was a language he'd forgotten, one that spoke of hope and humanity. As she turned to him, catching his stare, her smile was a quiet challenge, as if to say, "See me now, William Harris." The night deepened, and the ballroom's glow seemed to orbit around her. Victoria hovered at the edges, her eyes narrowing with each of Charlotte's triumphs. The seeds of jealousy took root, a silent vow forming in her mind to reclaim her place in William's world. But for Charlotte, this was no mere performance. Each step and word declared her worth, a refusal to be diminished by the glittering cage of wealth. As they left the table on the balcony, the city skyline stretching before them like a canvas of dreams, William spoke softly, his voice a rare confession. "You've surprised me tonight, Charlotte. I didn't expect this." She turned to him, the breeze catching her curls, her eyes searching his. "You should start expecting more, William. I'm not here to play a role, but to be me." Her words hung between them, a promise and a dare, as the city's pulse echoed the quickening rhythm of their hearts. In that moment, the gala was no longer just a battlefield. It was the crucible where their worlds collided, sparking a fire that neither could yet name. The morning after the gala dawn painted the Upper East Side in hues of rose and amber, softening the edges of William Harris's penthouse. Charlotte stood in the rooftop garden, her breath visible in the crisp autumn air, her fingers tracing the petals of a late-blooming rose. Below, Manhattan hummed with its relentless energy, but amidst the greenery, she found a moment of stillness. Ethan, William's son, knelt nearby, his small hands smudging chalk across a slate path, crafting a vibrant mural of dinosaurs and spaceships. His laughter bright as the morning sun tugged at Charlotte's heart, grounding her in the simplicity of his joy. Yet her mind lingered on the previous night, the electric clash of wit with Victoria, the admiring glances of investors, and the way William's gray eyes had softened, betraying a curiosity that felt dangerously close to desire. Inside, William sat in his study, the city's skyline framed through the window like a map of his ambitions. Papers littered his desk, reports of stock fluctuations, merger proposals. But his thoughts were elsewhere, ensnared by the memory of Charlotte in emerald, her voice weaving stories that made his world feel less hollow. He had built Harris Enterprises into a titan, a monument to his relentless drive, but last night had revealed cracks in his armor. Charlotte's presence, her unapologetic authenticity, had stirred something dormant, a longing for connection he'd buried since his wife's death. Hiring her as Ethan's nanny was meant to be practical, a solution to a domestic inconvenience. Yet now, as he sipped his black coffee, its bitterness mirrored his unease. She was no mere employee. She was a catalyst, threatening to unravel the careful order of his life. The glass door slid open, and Charlotte's voice broke his reverie. "Ethan's turning the garden into Jurassic Park. Want to see his masterpiece?" Her tone was light, but her eyes held a guarded spark, as if she sensed the shift in the air between them. William rose, his movements deliberate, and followed her outside. Ethan bounded toward him. chalk-dusted hands waving. "Daddy, look, it's a T, Rex flying to the moon." William knelt, ruffling his son's hair, but his gaze drifted to Charlotte, who stood with arms crossed, her simple sweater and jeans, a quiet rebellion against the glamour of the previous night. "Impressive champ," he said, then turned to her, his voice low, measured. "Charlotte, we need to talk. Alone." Her brow arched, a flicker of defiance in her expression. "Another gala already? Or is this about something else?" He gestured toward a secluded bench beneath a trellis draped with ivy. As Ethan resumed his drawing, William's words came like a tide, steady but forceful. "Last night was unexpected. You didn't just fill a role, you elevated it. Investors are still talking about you, DuPont especially. Your insights on community projects. They're calling it visionary." Charlotte's lips parted, surprise softening her guard. "I just spoke from experience. Growing up in Brooklyn, you learn what communities need by living it." He nodded, his eyes searching hers as if seeing her anew. "Which is why I have a proposal. I'd like you to publicly attend events with me as my partner for the next 2 months. Harris Enterprises has critical deals coming up, and your presence strengthens our image. You'd be well compensated with full public autonomy over Ethan's care and a bonus for your future." The words hung like a velvet curtain, rich with promise, yet heavy with implications. Charlotte laughed, an incredulous and sharp sound like glass catching light. "You're serious? You want me to play your girlfriend for boardroom optics? That's a plot twist even." M. Night Shyamalan couldn't dream up. William's jaw tightened, but his eyes held a rare vulnerability. "It's not just optics. You have a gift connecting with people, making them see beyond numbers. I need that. We need that." She stepped closer, her gaze piercing, her voice a blend of fire and silk. "Let's be clear, William. I'm not a prop, but you can dress up and parade. If I do this, it's on my terms. First, I have complete freedom with Ethan. His routines joy my way. Second, I choose my wardrobe, whether it's a gown or my favorite jeans. Third, no orders outside of what we agree on. And fourth, I decide when this ends, no arguments." The air between them thrummed, charged with the weight of her conditions. William's lips curved a ghost of a smile that spoke of respect, perhaps even admiration. "You drive a hard bargain, Miss Lewis. Deal." She extended her hand, and he took it, his grip firm, yet warm, a fleeting touch that sent a shiver through her veins. As their hands parted, something unspoken lingered, a spark that felt less like a contract and more like a promise neither dared to name. In the following weeks, their agreement wove them into a delicate dance of pretense and proximity. Charlotte accompanied William to glittering events, a charity auction in Tribeca, a tech summit in Silicon Alley, each time dazzling in her own way, whether in a sleek black dress or a tailored blazer that spoke of understated power. Her laughter, her insights, her unapologetic authenticity disarmed tycoons and won allies, her voice a bridge between William's corporate empire and the human stories he'd overlooked. At a rooftop cocktail party, overlooking the Hudson, she spoke passionately of microloans for Harlem entrepreneurs, her words painting visions of hope that left investors scribbling notes, and William staring captivated. Yet their connection deepened in the quiet moments away from the spotlight. In the penthouse kitchen, Charlotte taught Ethan to make cornbread, her hands guiding his as flour dusted the air like soft snow. Drawing by their laughter, William lingered at the doorway, his heart aching with a warmth he hadn't known since his wife's passing. One evening, as Charlotte tucked Ethan into bed, singing a lullaby, her mother once sang a soulful melody of stars and dreams. William watched from the shadows, his throat tight with unspoken longing. She caught him there, her eyes meeting his across the dimly lit room. "You're lurking, Mr. Harris?" She teased, her voice soft to avoid waking Ethan. "Care to join the bedtime story club?" He stepped closer, his presence filling the space like a tide. "You're good with him. Better than I've ever been." His words were raw, a confession stripped of pretense. Charlotte's smile was gentle, her eyes holding his with a tenderness that felt dangerous. "He needs love, William. The kind that listens, that stays." Her words hung between them, a mirror to his own guarded heart. And for a moment, the lines of their agreement blurred, the pretense giving way to something perilously real. Outside Victoria, Sinclair's jealousy festered, her spies whispering of Charlotte's growing influence. In her sleek Boston penthouse, she pored over files. Charlotte's old resumes, her dropped-out degree, plotting to unravel the woman who dared to shine in her former lover's world. But in the penthouse, as Charlotte and William shared a quiet laugh over Ethan's latest drawing, a family of 3 under a starry sky, their bond grew stronger, a delicate thread weaving through the artifice, pulling them toward a truth neither was ready to face. Once a cold transaction, the deal was becoming a crucible for their hearts, where every glance and touch hinted at a love that could redefine their worlds. The autumn sun wove golden threads through the treetops of Central Park, casting dappled light across the rooftop garden of William Harris's Upper East Side penthouse. Charlotte Lewis knelt beside Ethan, her laughter mingling with his as they planted marigolds in terracotta pots, their hands dusted with earth. Her simple cotton blouse sleeves, rolled to her elbows, carried the faint scent of lavender, and her curls were tamed in a loose braid that danced in the breeze. She was still the nanny to the world beyond, bound by a 2-month agreement to pose as William's partner for the glittering stage of Harris Enterprises' social circuit. But here, in these stolen moments of domesticity, the lines of their charade softened like ink bleeding into water, revealing a tapestry of unspoken desires that neither could fully name. With his storm-gray eyes mirroring his father's, Ethan held up a tiny seedling, his face alight with pride. "Miss Charlotte, will this flower grow as tall as me?" His voice, bright with wonder, tugged at her heart, a reminder of the innocence she fought to protect. She smiled, her dark eyes warm as the soil beneath her fingers. "With enough love and sunlight, it'll grow stronger than you can imagine, just like you, my little astronaut." Her words were a lullaby, wrapping Ethan in a cocoon of care that made the penthouse feel less like a fortress and more like a home. From the glass-walled study, William watched his silhouette framed against the city's skyline, a king surveying a kingdom he no longer fully understood. His navy sweater clung to his broad shoulders, a rare departure from his usual armor of tailored suits, and his hands rested in his pockets, betraying a restlessness that had taken root since the gala. Charlotte's presence had become a quiet revolution, her laughter a melody that echoed through the sterile halls of his life. The agreement, her role as his pretend partner, had been a calculated move to bolster his image. Still, as he observed her with Ethan, her gentleness weaving joy into his son's world, he felt a pull deeper than strategy, a longing that threatened to unravel the careful order he'd built since his wife's passing. He stepped into the garden, his footsteps soft on the slate path, and cleared his throat, a sound that carried both authority and hesitation. He said, "You're turning my son into a botanist," his voice a low rumble laced with a warmth that surprised even him. Charlotte looked up, her smile a crescent moon against the dusk of her skin. She teased, better a botanist than a boardroom tyrant brushing dirt from her hands. Besides, Ethan has a knack for growing things, unlike some people who only know how to increase profits. Her words, sharp yet playful, pierced the air, and William's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile breaking through his stoic facade. "Careful, Miss Lewis. You're treading dangerously close to insubordination." She rose, dusting her jeans, her eyes locking with his in a dance of challenge and charm. "Good thing I'm not your employee tonight, then." Just your partner, per our deal. The word hung between them heavy with the weight of pretense, yet light with the possibility of truth. Their agreement had woven them into a rhythm of shared moments, both public and private. By day, Charlotte dazzled at corporate events, a tech summit in Chelsea, a fundraiser at the Met, her voice weaving stories of Brooklyn's resilience into discussions of urban innovation. Her emerald gown from the gala had given way to tailored blazers and flowing skirts, each outfit declaring her individuality chosen with the autonomy she'd demanded. Investors leaned in, captivated by her insights on community-driven tech, while William stood by, his admiration growing with every word she spoke. But in the quiet evenings after Ethan's bedtime, their connection deepened, a secret garden blooming in the spaces between their roles. One such evening, as the city glittered below like a sea of fallen stars, Charlotte lingered in the kitchen, stirring a pot of collard greens she'd insisted on cooking. The aroma filled the penthouse, a nostalgic echo of her grandmother's Brooklyn kitchen. Already tucked in, Ethan had fallen asleep to her rendition of a soulful lullaby, his dreams no doubt filled with the spaceships and dinosaurs they'd conjured together. William entered, drawn by her voice's scent and soft hum. His tie loosened his guard, slipping like sand through an hourglass. "You're spoiling him with home-cooked meals," he said, leaning against the counter, his gray eyes tracing the curve of her profile. "He'll expect this every night now." She glanced over her shoulder, a playful glint in her eyes. "He may deserve a little spoiling. And who says I'm cooking for him? This is for me. Reminds me of home." She paused, her voice softening. "You're welcome to join, though, unless billionaires don't eat greens." He chuckled, a sound as rare as it was warm, and pulled up a stool. "I'll take my chances. Tell me about your home, Brooklyn, and your family. I want to know." Her stirring slowed her gaze, drifting to the window where the city's lights blurred into memories. Home was loud music spilling from open windows, kids playing stickball in the street. My mom was a nurse, always working, always giving. When she got sick, I gave up my scholarship to care for her and my little sister Clara. It wasn't a choice. It was just what you do for love. Her voice trembled, a delicate thread of pain woven into her strength. William listened, his heart tightening at the weight of her sacrifices. "You gave up everything," he murmured, his voice a quiet tide. "I don't know if I could have done that." She turned to him, her eyes searching his, finding the shadows of his losses. "You've carried your own weight, William. I see it in how you look at Ethan. It's like you're afraid you'll fail him. You don't talk about her, but I know she's there in the silences." He stiffened at the mention of his late wife, a wound he rarely touched. "She was everything. When she died, I built walls to keep the pain out. But you're tearing them down, Charlotte, and I don't know if I'm ready for that." The air thickened, charged with the vulnerability of their shared truths. She reached across the counter, her hand brushing his, a fleeting touch that sent warmth through them both. "You don't have to be ready. It could be enough to feel." Their eyes locked, a silent symphony of longing and fear, and for a moment, the kitchen was the only world that mattered. But the moment passed, and Charlotte pulled back, her smile a shield. "Come on, try the greens. They're better than your boardroom coffee." He laughed, the sound easing the tension, and they ate together, the simple act of sharing a meal, weaving a thread of intimacy into their fragile bond. As weeks unfolded, these moments multiplied. Charlotte teaching Ethan to braid friendship bracelets, William joining them for impromptu dance parties to Motown classics, her laughter drawing him out of his shell. At a yacht party off the Hamptons, she charmed European investors with tales of Brooklyn's community gardens, but whispers of their mismatch stung, a reminder of the world's judgment. In the car ride home under the starlit sky, William's voice was soft, confessional. You make people see things differently, Charlotte, including me. She met his gaze, her heart racing. And you're starting to see me, William. That's dangerous for both of us. Her words were a warning, a promise, as the lines of their agreement blurred into something perilously close to love, a secret yearning that threatened to consume them both. The glass towers of Midtown Manhattan gleamed under a stormy October sky, their reflections rippling in puddles that dotted the sidewalks. Tension hung like a gathering thundercloud inside the sleek headquarters of Harris Enterprises. Charlotte Lewis stood in the executive boardroom, her heart a drumbeat of resolve as she prepared to step into a role no one had even anticipated. Her navy blazer, chosen from her own wardrobe, hugged her frame with quiet authority, and her curls were swept into a low bun, a nod to professionalism that belied the fire in her soul. The past weeks had woven her deeper into William Harris's world, their fake relationship blossoming into moments of genuine connection. Kitchen confessions, shared laughter with Ethan, stolen glances that lingered like embers. But today, the stakes were higher, the stage corporate, and the spotlight unforgiving. William paced the corridor outside his phone, pressed to his ear, his voice sharp with urgency. What do you mean Carter's out, appendicitis? The Horizon presentation is in an hour. The Horizon Project, a $20 million urban renewal initiative to revitalize Detroit's neglected neighborhoods, was his boldest gamble, yet a fusion of profit and purpose that could redefine Harris Enterprises. But with his lead presenter sidelined, the boardroom awaited a leader, and William's empire teetered on the edge of chaos. Charlotte, carrying a folder of Ethan's latest drawings, stepped into the corridor, her presence a calming tide against his storm. Everything okay? She asked, her voice a melody of concern, her dark eyes searching his. No, he admitted, running a hand through his hair, the gesture betraying a vulnerability she'd come to recognize. Our lead for Horizon is in the hospital. This presentation could secure our investment, and I'm out of options. She set the folder down, her mind racing, her heart whispering courage. Let me do it. William froze, his gray eyes narrowing with doubt and intrigue. Charlotte, this isn't a gala speech. It's a room of investors expecting data projections and expertise. Her smile was a quiet rebellion, her voice steady as steel. And I've read your reports, William. We've talked about Horizon over late-night coffee. Its heart, its flaws. It's not just numbers. It's people's stories, hope. I know that world. I've lived it. He studied her, the weight of her words sinking in her confidence, a beacon in his uncertainty. He said you've never done this before, but his tone held no dismissal, only a question. And you've never trusted someone like me to try, she countered, stepping closer, her gaze unwavering. Give me a chance, and I'll show them what Horizon means. A beat of silence stretched between them, charged with the gravity of her offer. Then a slow smile broke across his face, rare and unguarded like sunlight piercing clouds. All right, Miss Lewis. The stage is yours. 30 minutes later, the boardroom buzzed with the low hum of anticipation. Investors from Chicago to Tokyo filled the seats, their tailored suits and sharp eyes, a testament to the stakes. William stood at the podium, his introduction crisp, his voice steady, as he handed the microphone to Charlotte. She stepped forward, her presence commanding the room, her navy blazer starkly contrasting the sea of gray and black. The projector hummed, casting images of Detroit's crumbling parks and faded storefronts onto the screen. But her voice held them captive, a rich cadence that wove data into dreams. Good morning, she began, her hand steady on the remote, her eyes scanning the room with the ease of someone born to lead. My name is Charlotte Lewis. I'm not an economist or an architect, but I know what it's like to grow up where hope is a luxury. In Brooklyn, I played on cracked sidewalks, where mothers swept glass from playgrounds and kids dreamed despite the odds. That's what Horizon is about, rebuilding and restoring dignity. The investors leaned forward, their skepticism melting into curiosity. She clicked to a slide of a derelict park, her voice softening yet resonant. This was my childhood, a place where we made joy out of nothing. Horizon isn't just about new buildings. It's about new possibilities. Streetlights that let kids play after dark green spaces, where families breathe accessibility that says everyone belongs. Her words painted a vision so vivid that the room seemed to shift. The sterile boardroom transformed into a canvas of human stories. William stood to the side, his heart swelling with a pride he couldn't name. She was no longer the nanny or the pretend partner. She was a force, her passion igniting the room. An investor from Chicago raised a hand, his voice laced with intrigue. "Miss Lewis, your love is compelling. Have you lived these challenges yourself?" "Yes," she answered, her gaze unflinching. "And that's why I know numbers alone don't change lives, people do." The room erupted in applause, a rare sound in such formal confines, and William's chest tightened, a mix of awe and fear at the woman rewriting his world. As the investors filed out excitedly, Charlotte turned to him, her eyes bright with adrenaline. "It worked," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "You didn't just save it," he murmured, stepping closer, his voice low and fervent. "You transformed it. You made them believe." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes, but her eyes held a flicker of something more profound. Pride. Yes, but also a question. "Just doing my part, William. You know, per our deal." They shared a look, the air between them, electric with unspoken truths. But the triumph was short-lived. Later that day, as Charlotte sorted Ethan's toys in the penthouse, her phone chimed with an email that stopped her heart. The Vita Plano Foundation in Chicago offered her a role as national spokesperson for their education and community development program, citing her Horizon presentation as inspiration. The terms were dazzling: a competitive salary, housing, and a platform to change lives. She closed the laptop, her mind a storm of possibilities and loss, her heart torn between the life she'd built here and the dreams she'd buried long ago. That evening, as she sat with Ethan on the couch, his head resting in her lap as he drifted to sleep, his small voice pierced the quiet. "Miss Charlotte, are you going to stay forever?" Her throat tightened, her arms wrapping around him protectively. "I don't know, little astronaut, but I promise you'll always have me no matter where I am." William watched from the doorway, his heart aching at the sight. He wanted to speak and ask her to stay, but the words caught in his throat, trapped by the fear of her answer. The presentation had been a triumph, but it had also set her free, and the turmoil of that truth churned within him. Charlotte was no longer just a part of his world. She was its center, and the thought of losing her was a storm he wasn't ready to face. The skies above Manhattan wept their tears, streaking the towering glass of Harris Enterprises headquarters, mirroring the tempest brewing in Charlotte Lewis's heart. The elevator hummed softly, its mirrored walls reflecting her poised silhouette, dark jeans, a crisp white blouse, her curls swept into a loose bun that spoke of quiet resolve. She clutched a folder of Ethan's latest drawings, their vibrant scribbles a tether to the simplicity of her role as nanny. Yet her mind swirled with the complexities of her evolving bond with William Harris. Their fake relationship, once a calculated dance for corporate optics, had woven threads of genuine connection. Shared laughter in the penthouse kitchen, stolen glances at glittering events, and a warmth that lingered like the afterglow of a summer dusk. But tonight, as thunder rumbled over the city, that delicate balance teetered on the edge of collapse. William stood beside her in the elevator, his navy coat damp from the rain, his gray eyes shadowed with a restlessness that mirrored the storm outside. The Horizon presentation had been a triumph. Charlotte's passionate speech securing millions in investment and a prestigious job offer from Chicago's Vita Plano Foundation. Yet the victory had left him unmoored, the realization of her brilliance, a double-edged sword that both captivated and terrified him. She was no longer just the nanny who brightened Ethan's world. She was a force reshaping his own, and the weight of that truth pressed against his guarded heart. The elevator lurched a sudden jolt that plunged them into darkness, the lights flickering before settling into a dim emergency glow. Charlotte's breath caught her hand, instinctively reaching for the wall. Was that planned? She asked, her voice a blend of humor and suspicion, her eyes glinting in the half-light. William pressed the emergency button, his movements precise, but tinged with frustration. Unfortunately, no. It's happened before, but never with me inside. He tried his phone, frowning at the lack of signal. We've been stuck for a while. Charlotte leaned against the mirrored wall, her arms crossing with a playful defiance that masked her unease. Perfect. It was my first corporate presentation, and is now my first elevator entrapment. You know how to show a girl a good time, Mr. Harris. He chuckled, a low, warm sound that softened the sterile confines of their metal cage. I'll make it up to you. Any survival tips from Brooklyn? Always have snacks. She quipped, her smile a crescent moon in the dim light. But since we're fresh out, we'll have to talk to pass the time, unless you're scared of a bit of honesty. His gaze met hers, a spark of intrigue igniting in his eyes. I'm not scared, but you might be surprised at what you hear. The air thickened the silence between them, a canvas for truths too long unspoken. Charlotte tilted her head, her voice softening, a velvet thread, weaving through the tension. All right then. Tell me something real, William. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just you. He hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of his coat as if searching for an anchor. Then, in a voice raw with vulnerability, he began. My mother died when I was 10. She was the warmth in our house, kind patient, always singing. After her, my father became a drill sergeant, all about discipline, goals, and no room for weakness. I learned to build walls, to turn grief into ambition. Harris Enterprises is my monument to that, but sometimes it feels like a prison. Charlotte's heart ached at his words, her losses echoing in the spaces between them. She stepped closer, the small space shrinking their world to just the two. I know about prisons, she murmured, her eyes searching his. My mom got sick when I was in college. I was on a scholarship, psychology, my ticket out. But when she needed me, I dropped everything. I took care of her and raised my sister Clara. I worked as a cashier, a waitress, anything to keep us afloat. It wasn't a choice. It was love. William's breath hitched, his gaze softening with a reverence that made her pulse quicken. You gave up your dreams for them. That's strength I can't fathom. Her smile was bittersweet, a delicate bloom in the shadows. Strength is just surviving what life throws at you. But it leaves scars. You hide yours behind boardrooms. I hide mine behind sarcasm. Their laughter mingled, a soft harmony that eased the weight of their confessions. The elevator's hum faded into the background, replaced by the rhythm of their breathing, the unspoken pull drawing them closer. William reached out his fingers, brushing hers as tentative as a whisper. You're not what I expected, Charlotte. You make me want to be more. Her heart fluttered, a bird caught in a storm, and she leaned in their faces, inches apart, the air electric with possibility. And you're not as cold as you think, William, but wanting more means risking it all. Her voice trembled, a confession of her fears, the danger of feeling too much in a world where she was only meant to play a part. The elevator shuddered before their lips could meet, lights flaring back to life. They stepped back, the moment shattered, but not forgotten, their eyes holding a promise that lingered like starlight. As the doors opened, they stepped into the rain-soaked lobby, the city's pulse, a reminder of the world waiting to judge them. But across Manhattan, in a sleek penthouse overlooking the Hudson Victoria, Sinclair's jealousy brewed like the storm outside. Her spies had delivered a file on Charlotte, her modest jobs, her abandoned degree, her Brooklyn roots, and Victoria's manicured fingers tapped against her desk, plotting. "This nanny is getting too comfortable," she murmured to her assistant, her voice sharp as a blade. "Find more. Anything that can discredit her. She doesn't belong in our world." Back at the penthouse, Charlotte tucked Ethan into bed, her lullaby a soothing balm to the turmoil in her heart. William lingered at the door, his silhouette a quiet sentinel. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of their elevator confessions. "For tonight. For everything." She nodded, her smile a fragile bridge between them. "Just doing my part, William. But don't get used to it. I'm not here to fix your heart." Her words were a shield, but her eyes betrayed the yearning she couldn't voice, a storm of desire and doubt that threatened to sweep them away. The air in the Luxor dining room, nestled in the heart of Manhattan's financial district, was thick with the scent of ambition and old money. Crystal glasses clinked under chandeliers' warm glow, and a piano's soft strains wove through the murmurs of Blackwell Holdings executives and international investors. Charlotte Lewis was not meant to be here tonight. Her role as William Harris's pretend partner was confined to carefully chosen events. Yet fate had other plans, drawing her to this elite gathering to deliver a signed document at the request of William's assistant. Her simple black dress, elegant yet unassuming, clung to her curves with quiet grace, and her curls were pinned loosely, a cascade of defiance against the polished formality of the room. Her heart, still reeling from the elevator's stolen confessions, beat with resolve and unease, sensing the storm that awaited. William sat at the head of the table, his navy suit a stark contrast to the pallor of his face, his gray eyes clouded with tension. The dinner was a critical juncture, sealing deals that would cement Harris Enterprises' global reach. Yet his thoughts drifted to Charlotte, how her voice had cracked with vulnerability in the elevator, the brush of her fingers that had set his soul alight. He hadn't invited her tonight, needing space to process the feelings she'd awakened, but her absence left a void, a silent ache that no deal could fill. Victoria Sinclair glided into the room, her crimson gown a bold statement of power, her blonde hair gleaming like a crown. She sat beside a British investor, her smile a calculated charm that masked her brewing vendetta. "Mr. Wilkins," she said, her voice a silken thread. "Have you met William's companion?" The one who spoke so passionately at the Horizon presentation. Wilkins nodded, his eyes bright with recollection. "Miss Lewis." "Yes." Sharp, mind-compelling vision. "I was impressed." Victoria's smile tightened, her fingers swirling her wine glass. "Impressive, isn't she? And to think she's actually his son's nanny." The words landed like a thunderclap, silencing the table. Eyes darted, forks paused, and a waiter froze mid-pour, the room's elegance shattered by her revelation. William's gaze snapped to her, his jaw clenching, but before he could speak, Victoria pressed on, her tone deceptively light. "Don't misunderstand. I admire the boldness. A nanny influencing strategic decisions. It's modern, progressive. However, personally, I value credentials in such roles." The air grew heavy, the weight of class and privilege pressing down. William opened his mouth, his voice faltering. Victoria, enough. But the door swung open, and Charlotte appeared, her presence a quiet storm. She sensed the shift immediately. The eyes on her, the tension coiled like a spring. Victoria's voice rang out loud and deliberate. "Oh, what a coincidence we were discussing you, Miss Lewis." Charlotte's heart plummeted, but her spine straightened her dignity, a shield forged in Brooklyn's trials. "I hope it was enlightening," she said, her voice steady, her eyes scanning the room with unflinching resolve. Victoria's smile was a blade. "Quite. We were noting your unique role." "Ethan's nanny, correct? It's inspiring, really, how you've stepped into such circles." The silence was deafening, a collective holding of breath. Charlotte took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping the table, landing briefly on William, who sat frozen, his eyes wide with shock. She expected a defense, a word, a gesture, but his silence was a wound, sharp and deep. "Yes," she said, her voice clear, resonant. "I'm Ethan's nanny, and I'm proud of it. Before that, I was a cashier, a waitress, a caregiver. Every job taught me something, how to listen, fight, and rise. I bring that to everything I do, whether caring for a child or speaking for a community." The room was still her words, a beacon of truth in a sea of pretense. She turned to William, her eyes searching for the man who'd shared his soul in the elevator, but found only a statue. His silence, a betrayal that cut deeper than Victoria's barbs. "Thank you, Ms. Sinclair," she said, her voice tight with restrained emotion, "and for showing me exactly where I stand." She turned and walked out her steps, measured her head high, leaving a wake of stunned silence. No tears fell, no drama unfolded, only a dignity that left the room breathless, the weight of her departure heavier than any applause. Hours later, William sat alone in his office, the city's lights a blur beyond the window. His mind replayed the dinner, each moment a lash against his conscience. Why had he frozen? Why had he let Victoria's words stand unchallenged? The answer lay in his fear of vulnerability, losing control, and admitting how deeply Charlotte had woven herself into his life. He buried his face in his hands, the weight of his silence a stone in his chest. A craft paper folder caught his eye on his desk, its colored tabs vibrant against the sterile wood. Project Portfolio. Charlotte Lewis read the cover, handwritten in her elegant script. He opened it, his breath catching at the contents: sketches of community centers, charts for youth programs, proposals for single mother support, all drawn with a passion that mirrored her horizon speech. Pages dated back years, dreams she'd nurtured before life forced her into survival mode. Each word and line was a testament to a woman whose brilliance he'd underestimated and whose heart he'd failed to defend. By morning, the story had spread like wildfire across social media and business blogs. Headlines screamed, "Nanny influences billion-dollar deals at Harris Enterprises." Some praised Charlotte's boldness. Others questioned the company's professionalism. A grainy video of her dinner speech, filmed by a guest, racked up thousands of views, her words resonating with those who saw her as a symbol of resilience. William faced the board, their faces a mix of concern and opportunism. "We need to control this narrative," the communications director urged. "No," William said, standing his voice firm. "We need to do more. I need to do more." Meanwhile, Charlotte sat in the modest employee apartment. Harris Enterprises provided her suitcase on the bed. She penned 3 letters, one to HR, thanking them for the opportunity, one to Ethan filled with drawings and promises always to be his friend, and one to William, brief and piercing. "Thank you for believing in me even briefly. I don't regret our time, but I need to move on. Take care of Ethan. He deserves the world." Her heart ached as she sealed the envelopes, the Chicago offer looming like a beacon of new beginnings, yet shadowed by the pain of what she was leaving behind. As she reached for the door, a knock startled her. William stood there, his face drawn, his eyes raw with remorse. "Charlotte, please. I was wrong, terribly wrong." She crossed her arms, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "You stood there, William, and said nothing. I bared my soul to you, and you let her tear it apart." "I know," he said, stepping closer, his voice breaking. "I was in shock, but that's no excuse. I failed you, and I'm here to make it right." He pulled her portfolio from his bag, holding it like a sacred text. "This, you are extraordinary. You should be leading, not packing. I want you to head our social impact division and bring these ideas to life." Her eyes widened, torn between anger and hope. "You think a job offer fixes this? Trust isn't a contract, William." "I know," he murmured, his gaze pleading. "But let me start somewhere. Let me prove I see you not as a nanny, a partner in pretense, but as the woman who's changed everything." She took the portfolio, her fingers trembling, her heart a battlefield of hurt and possibility. The city outside pulsed with life, and within her, a spark of hope flickered, fragile but fierce, as she faced the man who had shattered her illusions and might yet help her rebuild them. The Brooklyn morning shimmered with the promise of renewal, its streets alive with the chatter of vendors and the laughter of children chasing dreams across cracked sidewalks. Charlotte Lewis stepped into the glass-walled offices of Harris Enterprises, her heart a tapestry of resolve and cautious hope. Her navy blazer, chosen with the same fierce autonomy she demanded in her agreement with William Harris, hugged her frame with quiet authority, and her curls were swept into a low bun, a nod to the professional role she now embodied. The sting of the dinner's humiliation lingered, a bruise on her soul. Still, she had accepted William's offer to lead the company's social impact division, not out of forgiveness, but as a reclamation of her power. Once blurred by stolen confessions and unspoken desires, strict boundaries now bound their relationship. She'd set professional distant a fortress against the heartbreak of his silence. In his corner office overlooking the Hudson, William watched her arrival through the glass, his gray eyes shadowed with pride and longing. The man who had built an empire from ambition alone was changing, softened by Charlotte's influence, yet haunted by the weight of his failure to defend her. He wore a charcoal suit, its crisp lines contrasting with the vulnerability that now flickered in his demeanor, a man learning to shed his armor. Her portfolio of community projects, sketches of hope drawn in her Brooklyn days, had been approved by the board, a testament to her vision. Yet it was her presence, her unyielding spirit that stirred his heart, a reminder of the woman he'd nearly lost to his own cowardice. Charlotte's first days as social impact coordinator were a whirlwind of purpose. She moved through the company with the grace of a conductor, orchestrating meetings with employees from every level, janitors to junior analysts, listening with the empathy she'd honed in her years of survival. Her office, a modest space filled with plants and community art, became a sanctuary where ideas bloomed. She assembled a team of overlooked talent, a Latina intern with a flair for data, a senior analyst passionate about inclusion, and a former Bronx teacher who understood the pulse of struggling neighborhoods. Together they launched workshops on workplace empathy, scholarships for at-risk youth, and partnerships with nonprofits, each initiative a thread in the tapestry of change she wove. The corporate world buzzed with her impact. Headlines in business journals heralded her rise. From nanny to visionary, Charlotte Lewis redefines Harris Enterprises' social mission. Once bound by rigid hierarchies, employees began to speak freely, their voices echoing in the cafeteria, where Charlotte held informal listening sessions. Yet whispers followed her, some of admiration, others of doubt, questioning whether a woman of her background could truly lead. She met each stare with a steady gaze. Her dignity a shield forged in Brooklyn's fires, her resolve unshaken by the echoes of Victoria Sinclair's venom. William kept his distance, honoring her boundaries, but his presence lingered like a melody she couldn't forget. He joined her team's meetings as an observer, his notes sparse, but his attention rapt, captivated by her ability to transform sterile data into stories of human triumph. One afternoon, in a quiet moment after a workshop, he left a note on her desk. "If you have time, I'd like to join your next field visit. No agenda to see your work. William." Charlotte read it twice, her heart a battlefield of caution and curiosity. She considered refusing, but a deeper instinct urged her to let him witness the world she was building, not for her, but for those she served. The next day they traveled to a Brooklyn community center, a modest building painted in vibrant murals where Charlotte's latest project taught single mothers entrepreneurial skills. William arrived in dark jeans and an open-collared shirt, a stark departure from his CEO armor, his presence unassuming, yet attentive. The women crafting soaps and candles under Charlotte's guidance greeted her with warmth, their eyes wary of the billionaire in their midst. "They're learning to build businesses," Charlotte explained, her voice a blend of pride and purpose. "These skills mean independence and a future for their kids." William listened, his gaze tracing the lines of her passion, the way her hands gestured with conviction. "This is more than a program," he said softly, his voice a tide of admiration. "It's a lifeline." She nodded, her eyes meeting his briefly, a flicker of connection sparking through her defenses. Exactly. When a woman earns her way, it changes everything: her home, children, and dreams. One of the women, a grandmother named Rosa, approached, her eyes sharp with wisdom. "You're her boss?" she asked William, her tone skeptical. "I'm her manager," he replied, a smile tugging at his lips. "But she's the one leading." Rosa nodded, her gaze softening. "Then value this woman. She's gold-born with a strength most don't have." Charlotte overheard, her heart stirring, but she turned away, focusing on the women, unwilling to let his presence unravel her resolve. Back at the office, the impact of her work rippled outward. Employee morale soared, retention rates climbed, and the company's reputation showed newfound authenticity. Yet in quiet moments, Charlotte felt the pull of William's gaze, the weight of their shared history. At a rooftop meeting overlooking the city, as she outlined plans for a youth mentorship program, his hand brushed hers while passing a report, a touch that sent warmth spiraling through her. She pulled back, her voice firm. "Professional William. That's the deal." He nodded, his eyes heavy with unspoken apologies. "I know, but I see you, Charlotte. Not just your work, but you." His words hung like a fragile bridge she wasn't ready to cross. Victoria Sinclair's shadow lingered, her attempts to sabotage Charlotte, faltering against the tide of public support. Social media buzzed with praise for Charlotte's speech at the dinner, her defiance a beacon for those who'd faced similar judgments. Yet Charlotte's heart remained guarded, and Chicago offered a siren call of independence that she hadn't yet answered. Each night, as she returned to her apartment, she reread William's letter. Its words, a whisper of possibility. "I failed you, but I'm here now." One evening, as she walked through Brooklyn's streets, the lights of her old neighborhood glowing like memories, she stopped at a community garden she'd helped build years ago. The marigolds she'd planted with Ethan bloomed vibrantly, a testament to growth in adversity. She closed her eyes, imagining a life where trust could be rebuilt, where William's silence was a mistake, not a verdict. The thought of him, his softened edges, his quiet efforts to change, stirred a warmth she couldn't deny, a flame rekindled in the ashes of her hurt. At the office, William stood at his window, the city a canvas of dreams he now saw through her eyes. He was learning to listen to step beyond his empire's walls, and in doing so, he glimpsed a future where Charlotte was not just a colleague, but a partner in every sense. The bridge between them was fragile, but with each step, each meeting, each shared glance, it grew stronger, a testament to the power of redemption and the quiet pull of a love that refused to fade. The Brooklyn Square pulsed with life, a vibrant mosaic of color and sound under a late summer sky. Tents adorned with flowers lined the cobblestone paths where children in shirts proclaiming "My future starts here" darted between booths selling handmade candles and fresh-baked bread. Charlotte Lewis stood at the heart of it all, her dark blue dress, a beacon of elegance, its simple lines cinched with a thin belt that echoed her unyielding grace. Her curls, adorned with tiny gardenias from the community garden, framed her face, and her eyes shone with the fire of a woman who had transformed pain into purpose. This was her creation, a community day, celebrating the social impact projects she'd launched with Harris Enterprises, a testament to her vision of dignity and possibility. Yet beneath her poised exterior, her heart trembled, sensing a moment that would redefine her world. William Harris walked through the crowd, his son Ethan at his side, the boy clutching a small blue box, with a seriousness that belied his age. William's dark blue suit tie, absent, carried a quiet vulnerability, his hair tousled by the breeze, as if embracing the freedom Charlotte had taught him. The man who once ruled boardrooms with cold precision was now a figure of warmth, his gray eyes alight with a purpose that transcended profit. The past months had been a journey of redemption. Charlotte's rise as social impact coordinator, her transformation of his company, and the slow rebuilding of trust after his silence at the dinner. Their relationship, once confined to professional boundaries, had softened into something more profound, marked by shared glances and quiet moments that whispered of love. Ethan tugged at his sleeve, his voice a bright chime. "Dad, is it time yet for the plan?" His eyes, mirrors of William's, sparkled with excitement, and William knelt ruffling his hair. "Soon, astronaut," he murmured, his heart pounding with anticipation. "When you see the signal, you know what to do." Charlotte stood on the wooden stage, guiding the event with a calm that masked her nerves. She introduced local artisans, shared stories of mothers who'd found independence through her programs, and thanked the community that had shaped her. Her rich and resonant voice wove hope into every word, drawing smiles from neighbors and nods from executives who'd come to witness her work. William watched from the crowd, his chest tight with pride, knowing this moment was hers, yet hoping to make it theirs. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, William took the stage, his presence commanding yet gentle. The crowd hushed, sensing a shift. "Good afternoon." He began, his voice steady, but laced with emotion. "Today, I'm not here as a CEO, but as a man changed by this community, by this project, and by one extraordinary woman." His eyes found Charlotte's, her breath catching as she froze, her hands clutching the microphone stand. "When I met Charlotte, I was a man of walls, believing strength meant control." He continued, his voice a tide of sincerity. "She showed me that authentic leadership comes from the heart. Empathy is power, and caring for others builds a legacy. She came into my life as Ethan's nanny, challenged me, changed me, and became my everything." The crowd murmured, a ripple of awe spreading through the square. Catching the signal, Ethan scampered onto the stage, holding the blue box high. "Dad, now," he whispered, his grin wide. "Now," William said, kneeling before Charlotte, the box opening to reveal two simple, elegant rings, a promise forged in shared dreams. "Charlotte Lewis, you've reshaped my world, my sons, and countless others." Will you change the rest of my life by saying yes? Her eyes widened, tears spilling like stars, her hand covering her mouth as the crowd held its breath. William, she whispered, her voice trembling with joy and disbelief. I love you, your flaws, your growth, your heart. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. The square erupted in applause, and Ethan leapt with a shout. She said yes. William slid the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling, and she did the same. Their touch was a vow, sealed in light. They stood, his arms pulling her into a tight embrace. Their kiss, a slow, sincere dance of discovery, laughter mingling with tears as the crowd cheered. Across the city, Victoria Sinclair watched the live stream in her penthouse, her wine glass slipping as rage and defeat flickered in her eyes. Her final attempt to sabotage Charlotte, an anonymous post of old records, dissolved against the tide of public adoration comments, flooding with praise. A love story for the ages. She slammed her laptop shut, her schemes crumbling under the weight of their truth. 3 months later, the same Brooklyn Square bloomed with flower arches and white chairs, transformed for their wedding. Charlotte walked the path in a lace-sleeved gown, her eyes locked on William, who waited at the altar with Ethan in matching suits. The ceremony was heartfelt and straightforward, with vows that wove their scars into strength, their kiss sealing a union of 2 worlds. Neighbors and executives mingled their applause, a chorus of unity. Their married life flowed like a river, steady yet vibrant. Charlotte's programs expanded nationally, opening centers in Detroit and Chicago, each rooted in local voices. William joined her trading boardroom for community meetings, his hands sometimes stained with paint from helping build libraries. Headlines celebrated their impact. Harris Enterprises' power couple redefines corporate good. At home, Ethan thrived, his bedtime stories, now sung by both parents, his dreams filled with love. In Washington, D.C., they received the National Social Innovation Award, and their story was shared in a viral interview. It began with a gala I didn't want to attend. Charlotte laughed her hand in William's. And a nanny who showed me what mattered. He added, his eyes soft with devotion. They danced under a glass ceiling, Ethan on William's feet, a family bound by love. As they stood on their porch one night, the city's lights a constellation below, Charlotte rested her head on William's shoulder. Happiness used to feel so far away, she murmured. Now it's here with you. He kissed her forehead, his voice a vow. And this is just the beginning. What did you think of Charlotte and William's journey? Please share your thoughts in the comments below and rate their story from 0 to 10. How did their love inspire you? Subscribe for more tales of heart and triumph, and click the bell, never to miss a story that could change how you see the world.